Which celebrities have famously gotten away with serious crimes? Viewer discretion is advised. Please do like, share, and subscribe. Karl Malone, a Hall of Fame basketball player who got away with impregnating a 12-year-old girl at age 20. The reason he wasn't charged was because the family of the girl knew he was going to be rich in the NBA, so they avoided charges for child support. Nice. Rick James. In 1991, him and his girlfriend kidnapped and tortured a girl, to include but not limited to sexual abuse, forcing her to smoke crack cocaine, burning her with the hot crack pipe. I sure do love me some funk, but he was a certified piece of shit. Don King, literally one of, if not the most famous boxing promoter of all time, set up the Rumble in the Jungle and the Thrilla in Manila, served less than 4 years for stomping a man to death because he owed him $600. Pardoned. This thread is a real eye-opener. So people like Britney Spears and Amanda Bynes have their names run through the mud after having breakdowns, but some other celebrities have committed actual horrible crimes and nothing happens to them. This is awful. Vince Neil killed someone drunk driving. Victor Salva, director of Jeepers Creepers, the man is a convicted pedophile who filmed himself molesting a 12-year-old boy and only served 15 months. Still making movies now. Great. In 1975, Aerosmith vocalist Steven Tyler convinced the parents of a 14-year-old groupie Julia Holcomb to sign over guardianship to him so that she could live with him in Boston. Tyler, who was 27 at the time, dated and did drugs with Julia for 3 years before they eventually broke up after unplanned pregnancy, which resulted in an abortion. Tyler then returned Julia to her parents at the age of 17. That's just barely scratching the tip of the iceberg. It gets more messed up the more you dig into it, but nevertheless, Tyler would continue his successful music career and even be inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2001. Elvis Presley always had a thing for young girls and would invite them over for sleepovers. He was obsessed with virginal girls and called them cheers. Of course, he met his wife Priscilla when she was only 14, yet people just shrugged this off as though it was fine. I know R. Kelly is in trouble now, but how long did he go free after the whole pissing on a kid thing? A decade? Seeing Kirk Douglas being mentioned reminded me of how Clark Gable date raped Loretta Young, resulting in a daughter she had to have in secret and pass off as adopted. She only let him meet the child once. When Young was elderly, she heard the term date rape and inquired its meaning. When told, she allegedly said, "That's what happened to me with Clark." Just awful on so many levels. The sheer amount of times this happened, and is still happening to young women in the industry, is sickening. James Brown. Look him up and what legal trouble he got into over the years. Didn't seem like a very nice guy, and he got arrested and charged a lot. Lots of assault, and in one case he kept a woman trapped so he could use her for sexual gratification. Might not all be true, but sure were a lot of charges over the years. Pretty sure Charlie Sheen has a lot to answer for, yet has somehow never served any serious jail time. Aside from other numerous domestic abuse accusations in his past, he actually shot Kelly Preston in the arm during their relationship. I don't think anything came from that. Preston was probably just glad to get away alive. Pete Townsend of The Who always pissed me off. Got caught looking at child porn and got away with it saying it was research. Doubt anyone else would have been able to use that excuse and get away with it. Haven't listened to The Who since that day. Marcos Alonso, a Spanish footballer who plays for Chelsea. He killed a 19-year-old girl while driving drunk and got away with little real punishment. I'm really surprised to not have seen anyone mention Phil Spector. Yeah, he was convicted for 2 murders in the early 2000s, but it was straight up out in the open that he was an abusive, violent, and unhinged menace for the whole 40 years before that. He put the Ramones through the fucking ringer and pointed a gun at Dee Dee over him not wanting to get back in the recording booth after spending 12 straight hours overnight in there. After that incident, Dee Dee went on to say something along the lines of, "It's only a matter of time until he kills someone," and so he would. Edit. Ringer to ringer, and he actually only had 1 murder conviction, but 2 trials. Ringer? Hardly know her. John Hamm was charged in a violent hazing incident at his college fraternity that led to it being shut down in 1993. Hamm and his fraternity brothers nearly beat a pledge to death with a paddle, assaulted his genitals with a claw hammer, then set his pants on fire. The court let him go on the hazing charge on the condition that he would complete probation. Hamm shortly fled Texas before the court could file a new separate assault charge. Robert Blake. To clarify, he killed his wife. She was in his car, which was parked on the side street around the corner from the restaurant, across the street, and behind a dumpster next to a construction site. Then, he told the police he wasn't there because he had to go back to the restaurant to get his gun. Jimmy Savile. The documentary Louis Theroux did after all it came out is so disturbing. There's one interview in particular he does with a victim that made me feel physically sick. I get so angry thinking about it all. Nobusuke Kishi, Prime Minister of Japan in the late 50s. Fucker was called the Devil of Manchuria during the Japanese occupation of China and was responsible for most of Unit 731's experiments. If you don't know what it is, it makes some things about the Holocaust look tame. In the final days of the war, seeing the tides shifting violently against Japan, he decided to cooperate with the Americans so as to not be executed for crimes against humanity. Pretty disgusting human being, and he never got punished for what he did. Floyd Mayweather has multiple domestic violence charges with different ex-girlfriends. He got a slap on the wrist for all of them. You'd imagine after the sixth one, he would be tried for multiple offenses, but he never did. This is your regular reminder that Chris Brown violently assaulted Rihanna. A verbal argument ensued and Brown pulled the vehicle over on an unknown street, reached over Robin F. with his right hand, opened the car door, and attempted to force her out. Brown was unable to force Robin F. out of the vehicle because she was wearing a seatbelt. When he could not force her to exit, he took his right hand and shoved her head against the passenger window of the vehicle, causing an approximate 1-inch raised circular contusion. Robin F. turned to face Brown, and he punched her in the left eye with his right hand. He then drove away in the vehicle and continued to punch her in the face with his right hand while steering the vehicle with his left hand. The assault caused Robin F.'s mouth to fill with blood and blood to splatter all over her clothing and the interior of the vehicle. Brown looked at Robin F. and stated, "I'm going to beat the shit out of you when we get home. You wait and see." The detective said Robin F. then used her cell phone to call her personal assistant, Jennifer Rosales, who did not answer. Robin F. pretended to talk to her and stated, "I'm on my way home. Make sure the police are there when I get there." After Robin F. faked the call, Brown looked at her and stated, "You just did the stupidest thing ever. Now I'm really going to kill you." Brown resumed punching Robin F., and she interlocked her fingers behind her head and brought her elbows forward to protect her face. She then bent over at the waist, placing her elbows and face near her lap in an attempt to protect her face and head from the barrage of punches being levied upon her by Brown. Brown continued to punch Robin F. on her left arm and hand, causing her to suffer a contusion on her left tricep that was approximately 2 inches in diameter and numerous contusions on her left hand. Robin F. then attempted to send a text message to her other personal assistant, Melissa Ford. Brown snatched the cellular telephone out of her hand and threw it out the window onto an unknown street. Brown continued driving, and Robin F. observed his cellular telephone sitting in his lap. She picked up the cellular telephone with her left hand, and before she could make a call, he placed her in a headlock with his right hand and continued to drive the vehicle with his left hand. Brown pulled Robin F. close to him and bit her on the left ear. She was able to feel the vehicle swerving from right to left as Brown sped away. He stopped the vehicle in front of 333 North June Street, and Robin F. turned off the car, removed the key from the ignition, and sat on it. Brown did not know what she did with the key and began punching her in the face and arms. He then placed her in a headlock, positioning the front of her throat between his bicep and forearm. Brown began applying pressure to Robin F.'s left and right carotid arteries, causing her to be unable to breathe, and she began to lose consciousness. She reached up with her left hand and began attempting to gouge his eyes in an attempt to free herself. Brown bit her left ring and middle fingers and then released her. While Brown continued to punch her, she turned around and placed her back against the passenger door. She brought her knees to her chest placed her feet against Brown's body and began pushing him away. Brown continued to punch her on the legs and feet, causing several contusions. Robin F. began screaming for help, and Brown exited the vehicle and walked away. A resident in the neighborhood heard Robin F.'s pleas for help and called 911, causing a police response. An investigation was conducted, and Robin F. was issued a domestic violence emergency protective order. Roman Polanski. The guy fled to Europe to avoid jail in the US for drugging and raping a minor. He's living very comfortably over there and is even being given awards and celebrated in France. I feel bad for him due to his childhood and then of course losing his wife and unborn son in such a horrific way, but that doesn't excuse what he did. Caitlyn Jenner drunkenly, vehicularly manslaughtered someone and basically got a slap on the wrist. Apparently it's slightly different, as apparently it was an accident. I read about it years ago, so it wasn't that fresh in my memory. Paul Rudd stole everyone's heart. Ted Kennedy got drunk, drove off a pier and left a woman to die, then got people to lie for him. He also sexually assaulted women frequently. Nice. Jimmy Page raped Lori Maddox for several years, starting when she was 13. Page knew full well that statutory rape could get him in big trouble, even in the 70s, so went to some lengths to keep the relationship hidden. It is nevertheless heavily corroborated and well documented. Bill Cosby raped a bunch of people and called it a day. Apparently he's getting a new show after getting out of prison on a technicality for drugging and raping people. Nice. France's First Lady, Brigitte Macron. Everyone is acting like it's no big deal, but she actually started dating President Emmanuel Macron when he was underage, 15, and she was 39 as his high school teacher. Nice. Ray Rice beat his wife unconscious in a hotel lobby and only got suspended for 4 games. That same year, Von Miller smoked weed in a legal state and also got a 4-game suspension. So not only did Ray Rice not go to jail, but the NFL told us they equate smoking pot to violent assault. Conor McGregor. He's assaulted an old man in a bar. He's assaulted officials after fights he wasn't part of. He attacked a bus full of fighters, injuring several and emotionally scarring Rose. And for all of this, they used a bunch of it as hype for a fight in which they paid him enormously. Brian Kelly, head football coach at Notre Dame, directly caused the death of a student manager. It was a very windy day, and the manager voiced his concerns about recording video of the practice from a hydraulic lift. Brian Kelly basically said, "I don't give a shit, stay up there," and the lift ended up collapsing, killing the manager. This is why his recent execution joke on national television didn't land like he thought it would. Anne Sakoulas killed a 19-year-old boy in the UK because she was driving on the wrong side of the road and had a head-on collision with him. He was on a motorbike, so he didn't stand a chance in an accident like that. Then she scurried back to the US Air Base she was driving from and got on a flight back to the States. To this day, the US is refusing to allow her to be extradited to the UK to appear in court because of a bullshit diplomatic immunity excuse that doesn't even apply to her. It's crap. Matthew Broderick. On August 5th, 1987, while driving a rented BMW 316 in Enniskillen, Northern Ireland, Broderick crossed into the wrong lane and collided head-on with a Volvo. The driver, Anna Gallagher, 28, and her mother, Margaret Doherty, 63, were both killed instantly.